And we recently did a course on communication in the academy because it is so important. And I love it when people will say, oh, my husband doesn't like this nacho thing. And then we're like, well, how did you approach him with it? Well, I woke up Monday morning and told him I wasn't doing crap for his kid. Oh, and you're surprised that he doesn't like this? It's like, no. That's why we're like, please, if you're in our Facebook group, please join the academy to learn how to do this properly. Because if you don't, you can screw things up worse.
That's right. Yeah.
You're listening to the Nacho Kids podcast, where we discuss all things step family related. Real stories, real people, real help. Your hosts are the creators of the Nacho Kids Method and the Nacho Kids Academy Step Family Coaching Team, Lori and David Sims.
Welcome to episode 257 of the Nacho Kids podcast.
What's up, y'all?
What's up?
You made it another week.
All right. Just a reminder of a few things going on. We have the Nacho Kids Academy. Woo!
That's right.
Where you can get the help you need to better your blend.
Because you know you're about to go into the summertime and the kids are going to be around more often. You better get prepared now.
That's right. Then we have an expectations challenge that we are adding to the academy soon.
Yeah, I'm expecting you to be done with it any day.
I'm expecting the same thing. You might want to lower your expectations. This one's taking me a little longer than the other ones. I don't know why. I'm not even going to say what kind of excuses I can come up with. But anyway. And then we have the guided Nacho Kids Bootcamp Challenge.
Yeah, I would say the boot camp is probably one of the most powerful challenges there is in there.
I don't know, man. I think the change your stinking thinking.
It's a close race for sure. It just depends on where you are,
right,
in your blend. Because some people jump into, the change your stinking thinking, and it's like, whoa, they're not ready for that yet.
No, we recommend you do the boot camp first for sure.
Right. So this is definitely a great first step as far as a challenge, because you get that foundation that you need to build on.
Right. But we decided to do a guided one this time. Outside of the academy.
Right.
And you can sign up for it May the 18th. You have to send in an application, and we will pick 20 people to be a part of this guided bootcamp challenge.
Yep. So we're going to take those 20 people. We're going to walk them through the entire challenge. And there will be homework each week. Not a lot, just
each day, David.
Oh, shoot. There'll be homework each day to be done. Not a lot of time. It's not like you're going to have to spend 2 hours a day on it. But at the end of this 30-day period, during this challenge, you're going to see a massive change. And so we'll get your foundation set, and then you can decide what you want to do from there. But my recommendation is don't stop. It's kind of like dieting or working out or whatever. It's like you don't get to your goals and then stop. You have to maintain. So
yeah, because that's what happened to me. I just stopped.
What's that, on your dieting?
Yes.
When did you start?
David. A year ago. And then I stopped about 9 months ago.
I was going to say probably 364 days ago.
David. All right, y'all, David, you know how he is. But yes, and the reason we limited it to 20 people is because I want to be able to interact with these people. And every week we will have a 1-hour call where we can interact with each other.
Yeah.
And it starts June 1st, but again, applications don't start until May 18th. And of course, there will be a cutoff at the end of May. Probably before then, now that I think about it, because you need to know if you're in.
Yeah. Now, maybe you mentioned it, but how long does the guided challenge last?
30 days.
It's 30 days? Okay.
30 days. And it takes, on average, 10, 15 minutes a day.
Okay.
That's it.
I can do that.
All right. I got plenty to do, David.
Let's get it. Let's get it.
Our guest today is Veronica Grace Andrews. She is the author of Heal Stepmom Burnout.
That's a thing for sure.
Definitely. She's been a stepmom for 15 years. 2 stepkids that are now 19 and 22. So they were 4 and 7 when she started blending. And she is child-free by choice. She was excited about an instant family. Until we talk about losing yourself, losing balance, and of course, burnout.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's about it. That's what I'm telling you. That's all I'm telling you.
All right, then. Let's get to listening.
Today, we have Veronica Grace Andrews. Hey, Veronica, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Lori?
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been a stepmom for 15 years. My husband was already divorced when I met him, and his kids were 4 and 7 at the time that we started dating. We dated for about a full year before we got engaged and married, and I'm happy to report that we are still happily married all these years later. The kids are now young adults. They have lives of their own, and my husband and I are now empty nesters, and we are starting this, really this whole new chapter with just the two of us, and it's really lovely. It's like finally having a proper honeymoon, right?
Isn't it?
Yes.
It's crazy. And then the next chapter is going to be step grandkids.
That's right. Yes. I am child-free by choice, but I'm excited for the future with maybe some step grandbabies someday, because I think that will be a fun new chapter.
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
With you being child-free by choice, when you met your now husband, did you think, I'm not messing with him because he's got kids? Or did it just not bother you?
Yeah, I was actually excited about kind of the prospect of having this little instant family because, I like kids. I enjoy being around children, and I really liked my husband's kids. They were very sweet and good kids, and we all seemed to get along really well. So when I became a stepmom, I probably jumped in a little naive, thinking, oh yeah, this it might not be easy, but it won't be that hard, and we'll just figure it out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Then once you're actually in the middle of stepmotherhood, kind of the reality hits, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's holy crap.
Yep, exactly.
You didn't have any qualms about dating someone with kids. You just didn't want kids of your own.
Correct. Yeah, I never really was all that interested in having my own kids, but I thought, hey, I can be the fun aunt, to my stepkids. I can do the art projects and play the games and, take them to the pumpkin patch and do the fun stuff. And we did all those things, and it was great. There was a lot of fun, but all the actual dynamics of step parenting and all the little complications and no-win situations that pop up, that really caught me off guard. Those were the things that I wasn't expecting. And honestly, at the time, I had no idea how to handle it. And as we all know, when you jump into stepmotherhood, it's very confusing. It's very easy to lose your footing and just not quite know what you're doing.
And I feel like, I know with me and other stepmoms that I've talked to, you lose yourself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because you are focused on the stepkids and your new blend and your own kids if you have them. And then the next thing you know, you're like, I don't even like who I am.
Yeah. I had those moments where I looked in the mirror and I thought, I don't even recognize myself at this point.
Right.
You jump in with gusto. You think, I'm going to be the best stepmom ever. I'm
going to get an award for this.
Yeah. And there's just so much pressure. I think we put pressure on ourselves to be, perfect in this role and not make mistakes. And we feel pressure from society to basically, we feel like we have to prove that we're not the evil stepmom. So sometimes we swing too far the other way and we're too nice and we're too accommodating and we push ourselves too hard. to the point where we lose balance and then we burn out. We're so focused on trying to be a team player, right? And, we want to show our partner that we care about their kids. We want to show the kids that we care about them. But in doing so, I think sometimes we tend to go overboard and we overcompensate. And it's real easy to get burnt out when you're down that path.
Right. 100%. We come in and we're doing everything because that's what we are told our role is.
Yeah.
And also because we want to help our partner.
Absolutely.
So we're doing it out of love.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't take anymore.
Yes. We have good intentions, right?
Right.
It just goes too far and we lose ourselves in that process. We lose balance.
So yeah, we come in and we're going to fix everything. Everything is going to be great. We know it's not going to be easy, but we think that it's something that can be handled fairly easily.
Yeah.
And then you wake up one day and you're sitting on the front porch crying, thinking, what have I done?
Yeah. That moment when you ask yourself, what did I get myself into?
Yes.
Is such a lonely moment. And I think so many of us experience that. And, it's hard. I think as women, we are often raised to be the peacekeepers, to be the fixers, to take care of everyone else. There's such a pressure to do that. And then when you step into a step family role, you care. You care about these people. You want to help nurture them. And we have this instinct, I think, to help heal everyone else's wounds. And that often backfires in a step family environment, right? And there's certain things that we can't fix. There's a lot that we can't control as a stepmom. And when we keep trying and pushing ourselves harder and harder and it's just not working, it just drains us completely, right?
It does. And then, we look at our partner and we're thinking, why aren't you helping me?
Yeah.
Well, they're not helping you because we took over.
Yes. Yeah. I found that at a certain point early on in my stepmom journey, I looked up and I realized, wow, I'm kind of doing it all myself. I'm taking care of the kids, I'm taking care of the home. And it was very easy to start to feel mad at my husband, like, why aren't you doing more? And I had to be really honest with myself, take a step back and say, wait a minute, I jumped in and I kind of took over. That part's on me. I thought I could make everything better and fix it all. And I started doing it all. And, the kids and my husband, they all just kind of let me, right? They didn't argue. They let me take over. And I eventually started feeling burnt out, but I had to recognize, like, yeah, I put that pressure on myself. My husband never expected that I would take over and do everything for his kids, but I just did. As this kind of, I guess, a maternal instinct kicked in and I wanted to help, but it just led to burnout. And he and I had to have a little sit down conversation and just say, okay, this isn't working for me. Let's split up these chores more fairly. I need a break from this activity and that chore, and I need you to step in and take that back over. And he did, to his credit, he listened. He took back over the things that were burning me out. And I just had to have the insight to realize that that's what had happened and to have that conversation.
Right. And we can't fault them for letting us take over. Think about it. If somebody came in my house and said, I'll take over everything, I'll do the cleaning, the cooking, the laundry, taxiing the kids, you just sit back.
Yeah.
They're not
Who
going to
says no
say
to that?
Yeah. So how often did y'all have your stepkids?
Well, it's interesting. So it changed a lot over time. And I think that's actually common for a lot of us, right? You go into your stepfamily situation thinking that the custody arrangement is going to be a certain way and it can change on you. So at one point, well, in the beginning, we had them 50% of the time. And that's what I was expecting. And then at other points, just because of logistics and people moving and this and that, we had them sometimes for just every other weekend and holidays and summer. And then at yet again another point in my stepmom journey, I was full-time stepmom, like 24/7, 365. And, there's a big difference between having your kids every other weekend or 50% of the time or 24/7 full time.
Right. And that's a big adjustment for you.
Absolutely. And for everyone. I had to really step back and be mindful of this is a hard adjustment for the kids too, for their lives to be changing like that. And then, also having some self-compassion about, wow, this is hard for me too. I was used to having some time off and, some time not being on stepmom duty and just having my husband to myself and my house being quiet and calm and clean and orderly.
Yes.
Right. And then, if your stepkids are there full time, you do kind of lose all that. And I think, even if you know in your heart that that's what's best for the kids and you care about that, I think there is still a bit of maybe a grieving process of kind of losing that time off and losing your alone time.
Right. And I think too, with the stepkids, like you said, you're used to your house being calm or you clean it up and it stays that way.
Yeah.
And so when we end up having the stepkids more, it feels like we lose control.
Yeah. And in some ways, it actually felt easier because when you do have them full time, you and your partner, I think it can sometimes be easier to manage things together because you have them full time and you are able to make the day-to-day decisions together versus constantly having to go back and forth with the ex. But then in other ways, it's much, much harder to have them full time because new problems come up that maybe didn't exist before when you had them part time.
Right. And two, I noticed when David's kids went from being with us 11 out of 14 days to 50-50, it was harder. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that was because of the different rules and expectations at the other home.
Yes, absolutely. When we had the kids part-time, I would always feel like when they had been with us for a while, they were calm, they were happy, they were healthy, they were, feeling stable. And then they would go to their other house and then come back and it would feel like they were kind of a mess, like all of our work of helping them, stay on track with their homework and stick with the boundaries and the rules, all that work would be undone. And it would always feel like we were starting over from scratch.
Yes, every week.
Yep.
And you're thinking, how can you forget what the rules are?
Right.
And as an adult, we're thinking, well, when I go to work, I don't act the same as I do when I'm at home. So they know, they understand that it's different. Yeah. But I think we often forget about what the kids are going through and that their brains are not even fully developed.
Right. Yeah. Having some empathy and compassion for, the kids' entire lives and routines getting uprooted, every other week or whatever the schedule might be, that's really hard for them. Right. And, I'm sure it's hard for them to feel any kind of stability when they're bouncing back and forth between two very different homes.
Right.
If you're having, a parallel parenting situation between the homes because the exes have a hard time communicating or agreeing on anything, which I think is often the case.
Yep.
The routines and the rules in both homes might be extremely different, and that must be very disconcerting for the children.
Yeah, it's like going to church one week and going to the bar the next.
I love that. Yes.
It's true, though.
It is. Absolutely.
I know with my experience, it was a parallel parenting situation. It had to be.
Yeah, exactly.
For my sanity,
yes.
Number one, but even for my son, because if I tried to reach out to his dad and say, I'm concerned with such and such, or Jackson said such and such, it always came back as a negative to my kid.
Right.
And so I didn't want to put him in the middle of things.
Of course.
And ideally, yes, it's great if you can co-parent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can call and say, hey, I've got to work late tonight. Would you mind picking up little Johnny from daycare for me and keeping him a couple hours? I mean, that would be great. But the majority of relationships are not that way because we are not with that person for a reason.
Exactly. Yes.
So you come into this blend, you're all gung-ho. Then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I'm burnt out. I'm going crazy. I need help. Thankfully, your husband steps up.
Mm-hmm.
What was your relationship like with the kids? Did you come in and start parenting, or did you automatically have that fun aunt attitude when you first came into their lives?
I started out as kind of the fun aunt. I was always kind of organizing our little outings and playing games with them and doing art projects and science experiments and all that fun stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, something kicked in and I started realizing there were certain things about the parenting the kids were getting from both of their bio parents that seemed a little bit too lax.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to all of a sudden be the one like, hey, you need to brush your teeth. Hey, you actually need to eat some fruits and vegetables and not just Pop-Tarts and hot dogs, right? Because, again, coming from a place of love and good intentions, I wanted these kids to be healthy. And
yes,
that can very quickly be a slippery slope into being the nagging stepmom who's telling them to turn off their video games and go do your homework and all those other things. And you see how that happens, but you can also see how kids can very quickly start to resent a step parent if they're stepping into that role of telling them what to do, what not to do.
Especially if before you came into the picture, Dad was just all fun and games.
Yes.
And yeah, Dad would tell them to brush their teeth, but it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't, you need to do chores or you need to pick up after yourself or anything like that. But then all of a sudden you come in the picture and there's all these rules and structure. And they're like, wait a minute, you evil woman.
Yep.
Who are you to tell me to brush my teeth?
That's right.
And I remember sitting in Dr. Butler's office. And of course, he told me, he said, Lori, they're not your kids. And I was like, duh, I know they're not my kids. But at the same time, it hurt because like you, I wanted what was best for them.
Exactly.
I wanted them to be healthy and have good hygiene and do good in school and be outstanding young men.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from a place of love.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it wasn't taken that way by the kids.
Right.
And I will have to say, though, I think I had higher expectations of my stepkids at a certain age than I had of my own son.
Oh.
And a lot of that is because of how I was raised. My mom was very strict. She ran the house. She was the disciplinarian. And so I would kick into that. But with my son, I had some of that guilty parent syndrome stuff going on.
Right.
Even though his dad and I weren't together when he was born, I still felt bad that he didn't have the nuclear family. And I didn't want him to not want to be here and to want to go to his dad's instead of living here. All this kicks in. And so looking back, once I was able to step back and realize these things, it really wasn't fair to the kids in a lot of ways because I did have those expectations on them.
Yeah. And I've found that for a lot of stepmoms, and myself included, sometimes we just care about certain things more than their bio parents do.
Amen.
I mean, we care about, hey, don't these kids need a bedtime instead of staying up till midnight and they're 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
Or, hey, maybe they shouldn't be playing video games for 8 hours straight. A lot of stepmoms, those are, hot button issues that, hey, doesn't anyone else care about this? But sometimes the bio parents really don't. And I think that creates a lot of friction in a lot of relationships when there's a real mismatch on those types of concerns.
Exactly. And I know that's one of the top 10 Nacho rules is you cannot care more than the bio parent.
Right.
Well, you can, but I'm telling you, it's going to drive you to your grave.
Yep. It'll drive you crazy. Been there, done that.
100%. And a lot of that can be on the reason there's such a difference is it can be how you were raised growing up.
Yeah.
I was raised where I expected to bring home all A's, no questions.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas David wasn't raised that way. And so he didn't put the same emphasis on grades that I did.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
But also his kids were in a private school. And I tell you, it's a good thing we got my son out of there when he started middle school, because they would load these kids down with 4 hours of homework.
Oh, wow.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But you have these different expectations, and you could easily look at your husband and think, you're a crappy person. You're a crappy dad. How can you not want your kid to be the best and help them achieve certain things? But they just don't see it that way. And it does not make them a crappy parent.
Right. It's just different.
Right. I know when I had met David and the kids, I was like, they're very well behaved to be 4 boys. And I was really impressed. And I'm thinking, he's a good dad.
Yeah.
After we got married, I didn't have those same thoughts.
Yeah, that's right.
But the only thing that changed was my thoughts.
Yeah.
My perception. It wasn't that he was a bad dad. He just didn't do things the way that I thought he should have based off of my own childhood.
Yep, I hear you. And I eventually had to learn to just pick my battles, because a lot of those battles were not worth fighting. And a couple of them were. I mean, it's just one silly example, but I had to draw the line when the kids would sneeze into their hands or go to the bathroom and then come into the kitchen and start touching all the forks, right?
Oh, girl.
That was my line that could not be crossed. And you better believe that even though they're not my kids, I said, oh, wash your hands. Yep. But when it came to something like I thought they were playing, too many video games, I just had to let that one go. Because like you said, you just can't care more than the bio parents.
Yeah, the whole hand washing thing, again, having boys. You could hear the bathroom sink from sitting in the living room. So you knew if they didn't wash their hands.
Yep.
So, of course, pre-Nacho, I'm like, go wash your hands. I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Well, okay, creates an argument.
Yeah.
So then it's David, make them wash their hands. Because, of course, like you said, they're touching the doors on the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Bread. They are sticking their hands in that bag of bread.
Yes.
Girl, I had my separate loaf of bread for a long time.
Love it.
It drove me crazy. But it's like, why do I have to tell you to wash your hands?
Right.
And then you're thinking, okay, why isn't Dad telling them to wash their hands?
Exactly.
Dad don't know. He's not paying attention to that crap.
That's right. Doesn't even notice, right?
We are hyper-focused on what these stepkids do or do not do.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know, too, having my own child, not that I wasn't focused on him, but when it's somebody else's kid, you notice things a lot quicker.
Yeah.
You are quick to point out the bad. So bio mom was kind of in and out there for a little while.
Yeah, there were just some logistical circumstances and some moves and things like that, and then staying in or out of the school district. You know how it goes. So that's really what drove the changes in custody schedules over the years. And it went back and forth a few times, which was a lot to cope with.
And how did your relationship with the stepkids change or suffer any because of those changes, did you feel like?
Well, there's pros and cons of each custody scenario, right? I mean, when they're with you full time, it does give you an opportunity to bond a little deeper because just they're there more and you have more time together. But on the flip side of that, it also gives you guys more time together to maybe get on each other's nerves a little bit. And it fluctuates, right? I mean, I think that's the right word, is these things are always evolving over time in a step-family relationship. And for the most part, I had a really good relationship with both of my stepkids, but there were certainly rough patches, right? Just when you think you're making really good progress, a new problem will pop up, or you'll just hit a rough patch and a bump in the road, and things might regress for a while. And, those were the times when I would mindfully kind of take a step back and disengage from certain activities and turn to my husband and say, okay, you need to handle this. And it goes with changes in custody schedule. And I think it also goes along with changes in the children's development, as they hit different age brackets. You know, they go from being elementary kids to tweens to, you know, puberty and teens. They're going through their own changes just developmentally. And then when you stack the complexities of step family dynamics on top of those changes, it can get a little messy, right?
Yes, definitely. And I think a lot of times as stepmoms, we don't know what our role is supposed to be. So we kick into that natural motherly role that in the 60s, what the mom did, right?
Right. Yes. So easy for that to happen.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of times the kids don't know what your role is.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, this woman comes in and she's kind of taken over the house. She's the manager now.
Right.
Do I have to listen to her like she was my parent? Or do I just treat her with the same respect that I do an adult?
Right. Yeah. And trying to figure that out can be really confusing for both the step parent and the biological parent, right? Because I always had to remind myself and have some empathy for my husband that he doesn't know what he's doing either. Like, he doesn't know how to be a divorced, repartnered biological dad any more than I know how to be a stepmom, right? It's new for us all, and we have to figure it out together. And when we finally set down some basic house rules, we had my husband basically introduce it to the kids, and he was the main one to enforce everything with the kids. Mm-hmm. But if he wasn't around, you know, having some set house rules and expectations really helped me to just be able to easily say to the kids, oh, hey, don't forget rule number 2. And it was so much easier than having to specifically like nag them about what they were doing or not doing. It was just a clear expectation. It just wasn't a big deal. I just gave them a little reminder about, oh, house rule number 2. And, you know, luckily the kids adjusted very well to that. And I think most do once things are clear for them.
Right. And I think it's great that you were able to remind them of the house rule. That's one of the courses that we actually have in the academy, is how to address house rules and consequences. Mm-hmm. And it's best if, of course, the bio parent handles most of that, if not all of it, but that's not always possible. But if you can say, hey, your dad said that for me to make sure while he's gone that you enforce the house rules, and I really don't want to tell him that you didn't do this.
Right.
It comes across to them as, oh, she's on my side.
Yeah, exactly.
And not that she's against me. Whereas if you are constantly nagging them, they're not going to see it that way.
Yeah, exactly right.
And I do want to say that those house rules and consequences have to be agreed upon, and your partner has to enforce those. And it's best if he goes over them as house rules and consequences. And when they go to leave the house, they say, hey, while I'm gone, I want you to know that I've told Veronica to make sure that y'all follow the house rules.
Yep, exactly.
That way it's giving you that authority, and they know that.
Yeah, things got so much better after we did that. You know, it was just a matter of sitting down and agreeing on them together and getting that buy-in from my husband, because since he was kind of the, hey, I'm the fun dad, it took a conversation to just let him know, hey, you know, kids actually need some rules and structure to feel safe. They need to know what's expected of them. They need to know what the boundaries are, because they want to meet your expectations. They just need to know what they are. And once I phrased it to him that way, he was much more on board with it. And after instating some house rules, he realized how much better things were. Everything ran smoother, the kids behaved better, and it was so much easier, not just for me, but for him.
Right.
Because he didn't have to be nagging them, you know, on little one-off things here and there, because the expectations had already been laid out, and the kids just, you know, naturally kind of fell into that and found their way. And it became no big deal. It just became the normal routine for us.
Right. Now, did you ever, most people do the house rules and consequences together. It's, this is the rule. If you break this rule, this is the consequence. Did you ever have to enforce a consequence with the stepkids, or did you leave that up to your husband?
I did leave that up to my husband.
Girl, you did good. You did good.
Thank you. Yeah, that was something I just didn't even want to go near, is trying to enforce the consequences. But I do understand some stepmoms who have to, because, if their husband travels a lot or he's at work a lot, they might be the only one at home with the kids. And then that's a whole different ballgame, right? And that's
Right.
a harder balance for them to find. But no, for myself, I left that to my husband.
Very smart. Now, was there ever a time, and you're going to have to think back, I'm sure, that you had a house rule and the consequences, and your husband was just kind of like, it's okay. I don't care if they broke the rule? Or was he
Not
just...
necessarily. He was pretty good about sticking with the rules and the consequences. The challenge we did have, though, was when the kids were breaking the rules, he just might not even notice it. Because like we were talking about before, sometimes they're a little oblivious, right? They're, looking at their computer or their phone, or they're engaged in something else, and they're just like not even hearing what's going on in the background, or they're not watching what the kids are doing. So I noticed the kids breaking a rule, but he might not. So at a certain point, we had to actually institute like a little code word.
Oh, we were talking about this the other night on the Q&A calls. I think everybody should have a code word.
Yeah, because he just wouldn't even notice. And I'd be sitting there waiting for him to notice what was happening, and he would just be, zoned out and oblivious. So we had to have a code word where I could actually get his attention, but without, saying it in front of the kids. And that kind of helped to solve that problem.
Yeah, because you don't want the kids to know that you're alerting dad to what they're doing wrong, because that's just going to put that target on your back.
That's right.
And I know with us, we couldn't say Nacho because the kids knew about Nacho Kids.
Right.
So I think we came up, it changed a couple of times, but one time it was lettuce.
Oh.
And it's not like we would just scream lettuce. I would say, David, I need you to go to the store and get some lettuce.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd be like, okay. I'm like, no, I need you to go to the store to get lettuce. Lettuce. Oh, okay.
That's so funny. We did something similar. Ours was, hey, what's for dinner?
Oh my gosh. What's so funny is I hate it when people ask me what's for dinner.
Yep.
Do you too?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Why is it my job to figure that out every night for the rest of my life?
Exactly. Girl, I tell you what, David can send me a message and say, what's for dinner? And I'm thinking, why? Am I the cafeteria lady?
Mm-hmm.
It drives me crazy. Eat a freaking Eggo. I don't care what you eat. And it's funny because if my son's here, I do want to cook.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And actually, I don't enjoy cooking or the cleaning part aspect of cleaning up after cooking. Mm-hmm. But I remember one time when David's oldest and his wife had moved in with us while they were looking for a house and stuff. And David asked me one night, he said, so what's the plan for dinner? And everybody's standing there. And I looked at him and I said, there are 5 other adults in this room. Why don't you ask one of them?
Yep, that's right.
Because, girl, I'm telling you, it drives me insane.
Yep.
And now I know when the kids would ask me, the stepkids, it drove me crazy too, especially because you just walk in the door from work. You just barely put your stuff down. What's for dinner?
That's
and
right.
You're thinking, leave me alone. So we started putting a board up. And on Sunday, we would list what was for dinner for the week. That way, if before the board, I would say, go ask your dad.
Yep.
But after the board, I would just point to the board. I wouldn't say anything. I'd just point to the board.
Yep, I hear you. That drove me crazy too in the beginning. And eventually my husband and I started sitting down and creating a meal plan for the week together. Mm-hmm. And, we would ask the kids for their input too. We would say, hey, what are some of your favorite meals that you'd like this week? So that everyone kind of got involved. And then we would write out the meal plan for each day. We would go do the grocery shopping together. And I actually did like to cook. It's just something I legitimately enjoy. But I hate the cleanup. So that's everyone else's job. I'll cook, but my husband and the stepkids, they do the cleanup. And that works for us.
And that's great. I think I would be more apt to cook if somebody else did do the cleanup. Not that David doesn't, but we did the HelloFresh thing for a while, which is fun. And it actually made me try things I wouldn't normally try. But at the same time, those people lie. The prep time is not 5 minutes. It's 25 minutes. And I don't even know where they get these cook times from, but I'm still cutting up potatoes 30 minutes later. So,
yep.
So we did that, and that was kind of fun. We would do that together. Then we would do the dishes together. But then it's still a whole process. It's a 2-hour thing.
Oh, absolutely. It takes the whole evening.
Yeah. And so it was funny the other day, David asked me, he said, well, when I say the other day, it could have meant yesterday or 3 years ago, but he had said something again, what's for dinner? And I said, look, I'm sick of hearing that question. It is a trigger for me.
Yeah.
You and Jackson figure out what's for dinner for the next 2 weeks because I'm not doing it.
Yep. Good for you.
You think that lasted? No. Like day 3, what's for dinner?
Oh, no.
I'm like, why are you asking me that? Well, because if we say such and such, you'll say, well, I don't want that. I said, y'all figure out what y'all want. I am fine eating cereal.
Yep.
Or an Eggo. I like Eggos. I am fine doing that. Y'all just take care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And we would have nights where we would do fend for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You eat whatever you want. And we usually do those when my son's not here, if he's working or something. But, when the stepkids were here, they would complain about my cooking.
Oh.
So pre-Nacho, I would be stressed out because I had to cook and stressed out because they're complaining about it. And everybody's asking me about what's for dinner. And so it was just very, very bad. And so once I started Nachoing, David took over cooking when his kids were here.
Great. Yeah.
He took over everything in relation to his kids, basically. And it was the best thing we could have done for him as a parent, for me as a step parent, and for his kids. They needed him to be the parent.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. For me, one of my challenges in the beginning is, same thing like we've talked about, you want what's best for the kids. You want them to be healthy. And I took it very seriously to have, the nice family meal, all sitting down at the dining room table together, having a well-balanced home-cooked meal, and having the TV off and actually talking to each other. And, that's just how I was raised. And, I've seen all the studies out there that say that's, what's best for the kids. And, I was always pushing for that and trying to make sure we did that. And, a few years in, I just said, is this a battle I really want to fight? Because even my husband didn't really want to sit at the table and have the family conversation. He just wanted to sit and watch TV with dinner and let the kids watch TV with dinner. And I eventually just said, you know what? Fine, do that.
Yes.
It's okay. This is not a battle I want to fight anymore.
Right. And we have to give things the proper emotional weight. So, yes, that was important to you, but it wasn't so important that you wanted to feel like it was forcing everybody else to do it.
Precisely.
I know David was big on the everybody eating dinner together, and that was fine. I didn't have a problem with that, except for when the kids had poor manners.
Oh, yes.
Eating without utensils.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about a hamburger. I'm talking soup or spaghetti or something. Or eating spaghetti and slurping it and it's slinging everywhere. Girl.
Oh, I hear you.
Nope. So David let go of that dream.
Yeah.
Because he realized that his dream of everybody sitting down having dinner together was causing me a lot of stress.
Yep. Been there.
So we started, eating before them or after them.
Yeah.
And there were times that we still all sat down together, but if I started getting annoyed, I wouldn't look at David and say, you need to do something or anything like that. I would just get up and walk away.
Yeah. Yep. The table
no big
manners.
Deal.
Oh, it's such a common issue, right?
It is. It is. And of course, I'd like to think that my son has great table manners, but David would probably argue with that a little bit. So you wrote a book.
I did. Yes.
What made you write this book?
Well, so shortly after becoming a stepmom, I started looking for resources, right? Because when that wall of confusion and frustration kind of hits you in your stepmom journey, you look for help, right? And this was 15 years ago, mind you. Instagram didn't exist yet, and podcasts weren't even a thing.
Yeah, it's the same time frame that we were together.
I mean, there were just like no resources out there. And there were maybe a couple of books, but
But they all told you to be a nuclear family.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't find any step parenting books that were actually helpful.
Right.
I found them discouraging and overly negative and not helpful at all. And, giving me any ideas of what might actually work and what might help. So I started a local support group for stepmoms, and it started out very, very small, just a few of us getting together for coffee and venting a little and chatting and sharing our stories. And over time, it grew to be quite large. And we would have, I would organize these workshops, and sometimes I would bring in a family therapist to, give a lecture, or we would get together and, kind of brainstorm, challenges and come up with solutions and really just give each other support. And, I ran this group for almost 10 years, and a lot of stepmoms cycled in and out of this group. And I learned so much from talking to these women. And, here were all these amazing, intelligent, kind, caring women who really wanted to be good stepmoms. And they were all so burnt out. We all had these really similar challenges. And, we all hit these points of burnout where we just didn't even know what to do anymore. And that really stuck with me. And as we all kind of, shared our problems, but also our solutions, and we brainstormed together to find some positive, things that we could do to empower ourselves. I took notes. I kept a journal, and I took notes on everything I was learning and sharing resources with all these stepmoms. And a lot of them kept telling me, hey, you need to write a book someday. And I thought, oh, yeah, maybe someday, right?
Yeah.
Maybe someday. And I just kind of tucked that idea on the back burner. But honestly, during COVID, I think we all had some extra time on our hands here and there because of just the way life had changed. And I sat down with my notes and I thought, what if I wrote basically the book that I wish I had 15 years ago, right?
Yes.
What if I kind of write this manual, this guidebook full of tips and tricks and, strategies, like what I had needed to hear and read in the early years of my stepmom journey? What if I write that for new stepmoms now? So I sat down with all my notes and stories and all my own experiences, and I just started putting it together. And, it's hard work writing a book, but it was also very therapeutic to kind of go through the whole journey again with, a more experienced set of eyes, and looking back and reflecting on the early years, both myself and with my husband. I got his input on it as well, and kind of outlining, here's the things that can help. Here are the things that you can do to either prevent burnout or heal from it and bounce back from it if you're already there, if you're already burnt out.
Right. It sounds like that you kind of started like I did. Once we started this whole nacho thing, after Mr. Butler beat into my head, they were not my kids. And I saw that by my stepping back and some of the self-development I had done, how much it was helping, I created a secret Facebook group.
Oh.
And so I would see stepmoms getting pretty much reamed over the coals in a stepmom group, and I would private message them and say, hey, I saw that you weren't getting a lot of help in this group. I've got this secret group if you'd like to join. And so I started teaching them what I did.
Yeah.
And they started having success. And so then the next thing you know, it's, oh, well, I need to make this public. And, we started the podcast and the Nacho Kids Academy and all that stuff. And it is therapeutic, and it is good for us to remember how far we have come.
Absolutely.
And as far as writing a book, I am in the process, and it is a lot harder than you think.
It is, but good for you. Stick with it.
Well, thank you. I'm trying. Yeah. I may be reaching out and be like, okay, how did you do this and how did you do that?
Please do.
Because, there's the whole publishing side of it too. But it's funny because I can talk about it all day long.
Yeah.
But writing it is different.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole different ballgame, right?
It is. Even with the challenges and all the content we have that is written, it's still, you feel like you're missing something and you have to go back. And it's hard to organize it. That's where I'm at right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what is the name of your book and where can people find it?
My book is called You Can Heal Stepmom Burnout. It's available on Amazon in both paperback and ebook formats. And the ebook is also available at barnesandnoble.com, Apple Books, and Kobo.
All right. Now, I want to ask you one thing about boundaries. We all know that boundaries can be healthy.
Yeah.
They can also be paralyzing. When you had to set boundaries, was it hard for you to do so? Because a lot of times it's hard for people to set boundaries, especially if they're people pleasers.
Oh, absolutely. It was very hard for me to do. I think it's hard for a lot of us. And it's one of those skills that most of us were not taught. And it's a skill to set a boundary that we have to develop ourselves as adults. And yeah, like you say, when you're a people pleaser, it's very challenging to have, face that fear that you might disappoint someone.
Yeah, you feel like a bad person.
Yeah. And, I can think logically to myself, like, hey, boundaries are healthy. We need boundaries in any relationship, right? But especially in a step-family dynamic. But knowing that logically and then combating the feelings of, possibly hurting someone or possibly disappointing them, it's scary, I think, for most of us. And learning how to set a boundary in a very respectful and loving and calm and compassionate way is definitely a skill. And we go over that in the book. There's some chapters and some exercises on how you can set those boundaries and how you can present them in that respectful, compassionate way, but still get your needs met. There's a fine line to walk there, and it is possible. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the better you'll get at knowing when you need to set that boundary and finding the right way to do so.
Right. And I love the fact that your book has action steps for people to take. The journaling feature, it's not just a book that you read. It's almost like a workbook.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make it very practical, very action-oriented. I wanted it to bring, immediate help to people, things that they can start doing in their own lives and their own relationships quickly so that they can see progress and feel some hope and feel some motivation, like, oh yeah, this can get better. I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep working through these steps to improve this.
It's funny. One of the challenges that I have in the academy is the bootcamp. And part of it is writing down positive things.
Yes.
And I remember one lady, she was doing it, and like day 5, she's like, I am sick and tired of writing positive things.
Yep.
I'm like, but you've got to keep doing it, because it is proven that if you journal or if you practice gratitude daily, your life will improve. Your health even improves.
Absolutely.
Because if you can't find positive, and I know all y'all listeners, I know there's somebody out there that's saying there is no positive in my life.
Right.
I was there. But I'm also telling you, you can reach out to me and I will help you find your positive, because there is something positive in your life.
That's right.
A lot of times it's just we're overlooking it because we're so in the middle of things.
Yeah.
But also when you talked about setting boundaries, a lot of it has to do with how you word things.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And we recently did a course on communication in the academy because it is so important. And I love it when people will say, oh, my husband doesn't like this nacho thing. And then we're like, well, how did you approach him with it? Well, I woke up Monday morning and told him I wasn't doing crap for his kid. Oh, and you're surprised that he doesn't like this? It's like, no. That's why we're like, please, if you're in our Facebook group, please join the academy to learn how to do this properly. Because if you don't, you can screw things up worse.
That's right. Yeah.
Definitely.
No, I love all the support and content that you provide for step parents. It's so incredible that you have these resources, and it's such a gift to the step parenting community.
Well, thank you very much. It is not something that I ever thought that I would be doing. I am extremely introverted. and I'm private. So for us to go out in public and share with the world, literally, how screwed up our mess was, it wasn't easy.
Yeah, I bet. But look how many people you've helped and are continuing to help. It's amazing.
And that's where I get the strength from.
Yeah.
And from you doing similar things that you're going to get some hate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And some days you're like, man, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore.
Right.
It's draining and getting all this hate mail and stuff. And then you get one person that says, I want you to know that because of what you're doing, I chose to fight for my relationship. And that right there gives you enough motivation to keep going another month.
That's right. That's right. Getting that positive feedback is so wonderful, knowing that you were able to help someone.
Yes. You can't compare it to anything.
Yeah.
Which I know that your book is helping people too, no doubt.
Thank you. That was my whole goal, is to help as many stepmoms as possible, because there's so many of us now, right? I mean, there's
more of us than nuclear families.
Absolutely. Blended families are here to stay, and we need resources. We need to support each other and help lift each other up, because this is, the future of families, and we need to find what works, and it benefits everybody. My hope is that my book will help stepmoms and their partners and their stepchildren.
Yes. Because every single person in that blend is important.
That's right.
And everything that affects one person affects somebody else. If you're not happy as a stepmom, then your husband's not going to be happy. And the kids see that. Mm-hmm. And they're thinking, well, Lori doesn't make my dad happy. We hate her even more now. Yeah. Whereas if they see a good, positive relationship between you and your partner, then they're more apt to want a relationship with you because you make their dad or their mom happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is one piece of advice that you would give someone like yourself, a child-free woman that is getting into a blend with a man with kids?
Oh, that's a tough question.
And run cannot be your answer.
No, well, if I was giving advice to that woman or to my younger self, I would say do more research before you just jump in blind. Do the reading, talk to a step family coach or therapist, have the tough conversations with your partner up front. Really work on your communication and getting on the same page and figuring out how are you going to address the tough issues when they come up, because they will come up. When you're first dating or first engaged, it's all rainbows and unicorns and butterflies and everything's gonna be perfect, right? You're in that fantasy phase, and reality will hit at a certain point, probably very soon, when you jump into a stepmom role. And the more prepared you are, the more clear-eyed and realistic you are, the more research you've done, the more conversations you've had with your partner, the more capable you'll be of, navigating this very bumpy path and weathering the storms.
Perfect. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, this reminds me of when my son's father and I, the first attorney that we used, we shared. Okay. He actually worked for me, but we used it. He knew my son's father. And so we're doing the court order and stuff, and he's putting stuff in there. And I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Because I didn't know any better.
Right.
Then over the years, it's like, wait a minute, that was a bad idea to put in there. And so the more prepared you are, the more you know of things to discuss.
Absolutely.
One of the things you need to discuss with your partner, if you're in a blend, is how much of my finances do you expect to be contributed to your kids?
That's right. Yeah.
Who's going to pay for the car? Who's going to pay for the car insurance? Who's going to carry the medical insurance? What if bio mom or the bio dad doesn't pull their weight financially?
Which is common, right? It's a common challenge.
Yes, very common. And something that you stated too was about communication. And we've talked about that a little bit through this. I cannot stress enough how important it is to learn to communicate. It is hard to do. The active listening is extremely hard to do. But once you learn to do those things, it gets easier and it can help your relationship tremendously.
Absolutely. And it can strengthen your relationship. It might be hard at first, but over time, it builds a deeper sense of trust and compassion between, you and your partner.
Right. And you just have to figure out, like now, I can say something to David about his kids, and it's not taken the same way it was 10 years ago because he knows it's coming from a place of love and concern.
Yep.
Not a place of judgment or criticism, which is where I think a lot of times when a step parent says something to a bio parent about their kid, of course they're going to get defensive. That's their kid.
Yeah, it's like a reflex. It's automatic. They get defensive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But once you learn how to communicate that without those attacking like terms that we use frequently and don't even know we use them, it helps tremendously. Like take the you out of it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do. I've learned that the best communication is things that take you a long time to come up with. That's not Johnny on the spot reactions.
So
it's
true.
like, let me think about this. Let me say this. Let me write it down. Okay, if I heard this, how would I take it? Because remember, they're people too, and they are going to defend their kids. That's their job.
Yep.
And did you ever feel like that you were second to your husband's kids?
Oh, yeah, frequently, especially in the beginning. And I think that's such a common challenge for most stepmoms is, our needs always tend to come last in these situations, right? Until you really get on the same page with your partner and communicate your needs and find more balance.
Well, I think it's harder for child-free and childless stepmoms.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
If you look at situations, we work with all types of couples, and there's challenges with not having kids of your own, and there's challenges with having kids of your own.
So true.
But the ones that we see struggle the most with feeling like they don't matter or that they're second are the child-free or the childless stepmoms.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just can't wrap their head around why their partner doesn't pay attention to them when the kid's around. When in reality, the partner's thinking, I've only got 3 more years and I only get them 50% of the time. While they're here, I want to give them as much attention as I can. It's not personal.
Right. And then if your partner is the only one in the relationship with bio kids, they and their kids are kind of this tight little unit, right? They've known each other their whole lives. They have their own little history and their own little language and their inside jokes. And when a stepmom joins into that, if they don't make an effort to welcome her into that little circle, she can absolutely feel like an outsider and feel left out and feel like she's coming second.
100%. But you have to make yourself be first. And when I say that, I don't mean demand that your partner do this. I mean, realize that they're spending time with their kids, that they do have this history together. But you can sit there and I'll use the word mope about it, or you can join in and say, well, I wasn't around when that happened. Tell me about it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes that's hard to do. Even now, after being married, we'll be married 15 years this year. If we're at a family thing and somebody brings up something that happened when the kids were little, it's still weird because I'm like, I don't know nothing about that.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I don't think that feeling ever really goes away, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, Veronica, it has been great having you as a guest on our podcast.
Oh, it's been wonderful chatting with you. Thank you for having me here.
Do you have a Facebook group or anything?
I am on Facebook, but to be honest, I'm not overly active on it. I'm much more active on Instagram.
Okay, where can people find you on Instagram?
Yeah, it's at Heal Stepmom Burnout. That's all one word. And I usually post most days. And sometimes my posts do have, in a caption, just kind of like a little mini blog, or I'm opening up a question for conversation. And we have a pretty engaged audience, and I work really hard to make it a very safe and supportive and caring environment for stepmoms to, share their concerns and share their wins, their victories, their challenges, and help support each other.
That's great, because so often, even our story, when we start telling you what happened to us, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of negative.
Yeah.
But then you see how far we've come, and it's positive. And we do have to remember to take these wins, no matter how small they are, and hang on to them.
That's right.
Well, thank you again. And everybody go check out the book, You Can Heal Stepmom Burnout by Veronica Grace Andrews.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Veronica started out in the beginning, kind of leaving things to Dad. And then she started telling them to brush their teeth.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
One thing led to another.
One thing led to another. And I do think, David, that part of it's a comfort zone. Like, for instance, the day after you get married, you don't come in and go, all right, I'm in charge now. I have papers. You're going to start doing this, this, and this. But then after a specific time, or after a certain time, you feel like this is my house too. I have, quote, quote, authority in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start telling everybody what to do, and then it goes south.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different factors, because, like, for us, it wasn't necessarily that you felt comfortable doing it as much as I expected that of you. Like, okay, you're in here, you're their stepmom. They need to get up in the morning and get ready and get their teeth brushed because I'm not around. So you can just tell them to do that stuff.
Right. But we never discussed that.
No, we did not.
Red flag number 1.
I think that's the problem that a lot of people encounter, is they don't have those discussions because it sounds like it should just make sense logistically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I see a lot of guys pushing back against the Nacho Kids parenting method, because they feel like it makes no sense. Like, why is it so much for me to expect or ask the stepmom to do these things? Like, I'm not there. Why can't she just do them?
Well, a lot of people want the stepmom to do it even when they are there because of gender roles.
That's true too. And, just for some people it works. But for a lot of people, especially those that are typically following us, it's not working. Mm-hmm. And we've seen times where it started out working, and then all of a sudden went south for whatever reason. So it's just those things you have to communicate. But also, and I'm going to speak to the guys here, but you also have to understand, if things change, if the relationships start suffering for that, then you got to do something different. And that might make your blend look different for a while. Meaning, stepmom may have to not do some of those things they were doing before and start rebuilding those relationships. And that might mean you'll have to make other changes to step up and do things, or find alternative ways to get things done, or whatever the case might be. But you've got to figure out what works so that everybody in the blend doesn't lose their sanity every single day.
Right.
If you've got people, I don't care if it's the stepkids or the stepmom and all this, but you got people going to different ends of the house and then crying every day. You've got issues you have to address. You can't keep doing the same thing and getting the same results. You need to make a change.
Exactly. And that would be joining the Nacho Kids Academy.
Yeah, at least. But don't just join, do the work.
Right. And look, of course, we're going to promote the Nacho Kids Academy, but get help wherever you feel like you are comfortable with the person that's providing the help.
Yeah. Yeah. Go to a therapist, go to a coach, go to a counselor. I would say go to a friend, but
no. Unless that friend has been through it, they will not get it. And also, regarding going to a counselor or a coach, you need to make sure that it's somebody that has blended family background.
Yeah.
And knowledge.
Yeah. We can speak more on that next time, but we're out of time for today. So I'm going to wrap it up here.
Okay.
Thanks for listening today, folks, and join us again next week. But until then, remember, life is good
When you nacho.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nacho Kids Podcast. Find us online at nachokids.com. Until next time, remember, life is good when you nacho.